Order the Tuesday, May 30th, 2023 meeting of the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority Finance Committee. And each of us received a copy of the financial information prior to the meeting. I have no specific questions to open the meeting. Do either of you before we ask Patty for a report? No. Would you highlight?
I'll highlight.
That sounds great.
Looking back first at the 22-23 fiscal year, the marine terminal and wind turbine projects together were the vast majority of extra funds that we received for the year. Healthy salt, steel project, the extra wind turbine project, that individual blade that came in. All of these projects allowed us to have enough funds to put money aside for the OBPA portion of the first two Chrissy grant pieces, pay the entire 2022 Neisler's retirement bill in one payment, keep all of the port invoices in check so that other funding could assist the airport. The OBPA sends $75,000 a month to Tompkins Trust to pay principal and interest on various mortgages, lines of credit, and loans. There is usually between $10,000 and $14,000 that has been historically going to ensure that the compensating balance was always met, that $200,000 that we had to have in. As the general line of credit was coming up for renewal, the bank requested that the line be brought down to zero during the duration of the renewal, and that's pretty much April through June. Part of the overage on the compensating balance paid off the $105,000 that was left on the line of credit. In addition, the overage on the compensating balance also allowed the OBPA to pay off the balance of the term loan, which is approximately $60,000. Not only did this payoff take the loan out of the current fiscal year, it also reduced the interest that the OBPA had to pay on the loan. So those are some of the real good highlights of what happened this year. There are a lot of not so good highlights for the year. One of the biggest things that I know bothers a number of us, airport parking was budgeted to come in at 40,000, and it did come in at 65,000, so that was the plus. But even with that little extra income, the OBPA still had to provide $194,000 in support of MAFCO's airport operation. So that was still a hefty chunk, and we're nowhere near the $266,000 that was brought in parking back in 2018-19. And I don't foresee that changing too soon. The other thing that we had, if we take out the fuel, because the fuel sales offset the fuel purchases and the AEAS, expenses, income at the airport actually exceeded budget by $39,000, but expenses exceeded budget by $209,000. The only saving grace this year was that we had the ARPA monies to offset that $209,000 in excess, and that will become a problem this year because we no longer have any of those federally funded supports.
Could you repeat that? Airport expenses exceeded revenues by?
Oh, by budget expenses by $209,000.
So that's just budget, as opposed to, thank you.
Yes.
Good question.
So we're still about, our expenses exceeded budget by, or income by about the same, $190,000.
And the 194,000 to support MAPCO. Could you provide a little bit more detail on that? What are we talking about in MAPCO expenses other than what, salary and cost of the gates?
We pay them their salaries, any of the cleaning supplies, any repairs to the gate, or that little machine where you can pay for your money or your parking, the loan for the parking software, that is approximately $3,700 a month. So 36,000 of that 194 was just for the loan for the software. They have phones out there. We pay the phone bills.
Why would we pay for the repairs on the gate when we don't own it?
I'm wondering the same.
On the gate?
Yeah,
Gate or the machine, or the machine to pay. You talking a machine in the airport terminal or?
Well,
It's all passed through the whole
It's all
contract.
just a pass through.
the contract. They don't service or guarantee the equipment. That's,
I voted for that.
we bought the equipment, so it's our equipment with the loan, even, see, they don't own it. If we, you follow me there.
Yep.
If they kept it and we're paying them for it, paying it off, we took ownership of that through the loan.
For the loan.
So everything from rental equipment that they may, like they'll rent a truck with a sander on it. We've gotten away from the loader because we've decided there's some things we can do in snowstorms. So there's no need to have a loader moving snow around. We've got a snow blower in our home. So we got rid of that. But for years, they'd rent a small loader just to move things around. We'd pay for that.
So that MAPCO truck that sits out there
Yep.
is,
It's a rental. I mean, there's a charge for that.
Probably, yeah.
so at the end of the term with them, it reverts to,
No, it's not a rent to own or anything like that.
it's not ours.
No, it's not ours. It's probably a rental company that it's a pass through. How
Shame
many,
on-
2 more years?
2026, I imagine they'll be talking to us within the next year or so. Their contract is up in 2026.
That'd be a quick meeting.
And as you know, it's the loan that's been really, it's getting better, but we just don't have the free cash flow to eliminate that loan and then do something differently. But as long as that loan's there, it precludes us from making any kind of meaningful direction in that regard.
Was that around 130 or so? Is that?
I think we're down to about 130, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
But, well, just for example, the amount of money that we paid in excess is about what, 130?
No,
No, what I'm saying is, if you're just looking at that, you can take that money out ahead, pay that off, then it's on us. And we go forward without, we take the hit on everything, but going forward, but we just haven't had, when you look at it, what you should be doing, but we can't because of the,
yeah.
the fluidity of the cash or lack of it.
Hmm.
Does that make sense to you?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it does.
But Patty did a really good analysis of it, and we can get into more detail on that, which it kind of measures where we're at.
Any questions? That's just sort of a wrap up of 22, 23. The auditors came in today. They'll be here through Friday to do the audit. So far, so good. And they're asking for all the normal little things that the auditors do. So they're here.
Patty's group has done a really great job of prepping on this as far as years go by.
We get better every year.
But she had a checklist and pretty much her groups met all of that. So hopefully things will be good for the auditors as far as clarity and speed of the work that they can do.
So now I'll just go on to April.
Okay, excellent.
Starting with the statement of financial position, our accounts receivable, our regular accounts receivable are at 236, and that is 90% of the open AR is either current or 1 to 30 days. So we're keeping that 90 or above on the regular AR. The AEAS is just how it falls at the end of the month when we pay them, whether we have 2 or 3 outstanding to come in. You'll notice that our construction in progress has gone down. We took out that part of the harbor deepening and expensed it, and we've already spoken to the auditors about that this morning. Our regular accounts payable is 627. Our AES contour is 374, and we have 104 in project AP right now. We were waiting on some of this for the revitalization grant to be signed and sent back to us. And now we're trying to work with McFarland Johnson to see whether this is a grant where we have to pay it up front and they get the money back, or especially the engineering portion, usually that can go forward. And you'll notice that the long-term liabilities went down from 9.1 million to 8.5 million. That happens every year as we move the 23-24 portion into current liabilities, but that's about how much we expect to pay this current fiscal year in mortgages, loans, bonds, etc. As we always have at the bottom, our top 5 accounts, our top 4 construction in progress, and our top 5 accounts payable vendors. Parsons was paid $20,000 in April. Willatus was paid $37,000. And Ascent, OMLC, and Excelis were paid in full in April. So there's nothing outstanding for them right now. Well, Excelis, we have another bill.
In May or in April?
Oh, I'm sorry, May,
Sure.
because we're doing April.
Yes. Yeah.
Any questions on the financial position?
The amount we owe the city consists of what?
Water, sewer, Leo, both. So if we move on to the budget to actual, pretty much everybody was under budget in income for the first month of the fiscal year. The marine terminal did come in over budget, which was excellent. We had storage income coming in ahead of budget. We had salt chunk crushing that we passed through. The salt had to be crunched up so that I believe it could be moved, James?
Yeah, moved in.
And
Free of dock space.
reshaped. So we are getting reimbursed for that. And then the interest on the monies that we received back, the interest on that goes to the marine terminal, and that comes out to approximately $20,000 a month, which we had not budgeted. So that's a little, but it is restricted, assuming that the state will expect us to be investing that money. The interest that comes in on that is also restricted. Bridge expenses, almost all of them are under budget. The legal expense is over budget because we're working on the ILA grievance for the scale house operator. The airport expenses are almost all either on target or under budget. We did not, you will notice, have fuel sales at all in the month of April. And We do have more fuel sales coming in the month of May, but April is still a bad month for general aviation. The industrial park, the only expense that was over budget was the general expenses, and that was money paid to the free trade zone attorney, which was not budgeted. We did not know that we were going to have money to go to them, but that should even out over time. The marine terminal under employee benefits, you'll notice that's over budget. All unemployment payments are to non-working ILA members right now, and one former airport employee. But a majority of it is all ILA workers, so they get the unemployment. And the maintenance expense, we had some unanticipated scale repair due to the lightning strike that happened. When was that? April?
I think so. Yeah, must have.
13th,
You can't
14th.
control the weather, I mean,
That was,
Umbrella.
that was 2,200 of that. And I have a very strange feeling that the loader rental is not in the budget. That was the only other thing I could find that was not normal. So I fear that that loader rental that's due, that comes due next year, the beginning of next year.
The lease.
Yeah, the lease, I think we're going to find that will haunt us this year. The border station expenses, we are keeping those separate to assist with the request to unwind the border station and find a home for all the expenses where they belong. The OBPA portion of projects and capital expenditures, this is a gross figure that will probably disappear. We're waiting on knowing when we can submit some of these grant.
Reimbursements.
Yes. So right now, it's just sitting in the OBPA portion of the projects, and it should disappear or go down to about $2,000, because that would be our 2.5%.
so not all of that is reimbursable, but a large percentage is.
Probably 95% of it is reimbursable.
Okay.
So if you take that out, we're right on target for the month. Any questions on that? And now we'll go to the,
Well, wait a minute,
okay,
the bridge traffic, bridge revenue. Are we down in truck traffic in April
By budget or by normal year?
by normal year?
No. Wait. Normal year, I think we anticipated somewhere close to 20% down, and I think it came in at 23. That was kind of the first month of everything, everything wiped out and all of that. So we were a little surprised at that, but when you look at some of the weather and things like that, it was disappointing, but it wasn't concerning yet. I want to see what May does, which we'll know in the middle of the week.
Do you know what's going on across the border, other stations? I mean, are they seeing pretty much the same thing we are?
Well, some that are similar, the numbers are amazingly, percentage-wise, are the
Right.
same. But the ones that have a vast majority of daily business traffic, the big ones, and truck traffic, they've come back quite a bit more than we have percentage-wise. But I've seen some that I've always kept an eye on. They're similar. I'm amazed at how close we are. But you'd think everything would be just on location.
Right.
But it seems it's a trend, And a lot, I think, has to do with Canadian, for us anyway, it's a change in the way Canadians come here that wasn't ever an issue. And I've said this before, is they found different ways to make things, to where to buy things, where to go. And it's just put a little damper on those discretionary daily trips.
Are we at the point now? I know last month, things stopped, any restrictions at all stopped for Canadians coming over. Maybe at the end of May or maybe into June, if it appears we're still down 20, 25% from what we were pre-COVID, I'm afraid that the amount of traffic we got across the bridge pre-COVID isn't coming back. And I think we need to let Albany be aware of that.
Yeah.
And it may be across the whole northern border. I'm just speculating on that because of everything I've read. And I'm sure you have in different Canadian publications. Because of what happened during COVID over in Canada, a lot of them had changed their habits and of course that hurts those of us along the northern border.
If you take a look at like the bridge and tunnel operator numbers going back to like say 95, I just look at them and you can't get over the amount of Canadian and US traffic up until 2001. And then it just, because of 9/11, just dropped off. And then in 2 or 3 years, it never came back anywhere near that, but we all know we lived it, what they wanted for IDs and things like that. And and then you'd see in 2009 and 10, economics drove that, and then it would come back. And then you go according to the dollar. And right now, the Canadian dollar, the godsend for us would be the Canadian dollar to go to somewhere in the 80s. And I think you'd see it. But those combinations with coming out of COVID explains a lot of it. But, I'm with what Sam's saying, I don't know is, the new world or the new number may never come back to what it was in 2019. So it's concerning as far as, we built an operation of scale that takes into, you just always assume it's going to be about that number or more. And it's not, we don't see it happening right away.
Well, I think that the numbers you mentioned for comparable crossing points, if they were put on paper, would be very important to presenting a case to other levels of government. Because otherwise they might say, this is the outlier. But if we're not the outlier, if we're part of a cultural and administrative shift, which could even include things like the increasing amount of purchases made by online.
And then when you take a look at everybody's moving beyond COVID, but we found out our weak spots and the factors that make the OBPA run, that they're still there. It's not like, and I used the thruway as an example, when the thruway shut down, or when things shut down, the thruway wasn't shut at one end or the other. And then gradually it was all dependent on people came back and their traffic came back and they're getting to normal. Whereas we had restrictions up until a month ago. And then also we've got those factors feed into the port, they feed into the airport, and we're still there, and they may never, it's something that it's hard to overcome with that. But I think Albany, probably things in Albany, they're not concerned anymore. Okay, we're done with that COVID. And, you talk about the thruway or OBPA or different things down there that they, on their own momentum, have come back. Whereas there's just things that we're only so much we can do, and it's tough to overcome them.
Understand.
Yeah, I mean, we're not the Port of New York, New Jersey. That's a lot of international. We're not even the Port of Albany because they deal with a lot coming up the Hudson. But we're dealing international, you know what I mean, with a country that things have changed in the last 5 years. I mean, more severely than they have in the past, and how that affects us. I'm not quite sure they understand that. And you and I have talked about that before with them. But now I think we have more concrete numbers to show them and say, look, things are not like they were before, and this is going to be an issue for us.
Right. It goes to your thing about financial stabilization that others have been privileged to, either, I don't know, locally or through the state. I mean, it's not everywhere, but I think in some ways we fall into that category. And then you do recall when we first started, we really well predicted what we'd see. So we're not, just throwing numbers out, woe was me when this first started.
Right.
You look back at the numbers things that we thought we'd need, they match up with where we are financially. I mean, I think it was we asked for somewhere in the $3.5 to $4 million. Then granted, we didn't know at the time we'd be getting help through different programs there, but everybody did, so it's not like, it just came to us and that eliminated our issues.
Any other financial questions?
Are you happy with that, Patty's? I like this, the budget to actual kind of, I'm sorry, wait, what's your last one, Pat? What's that
Oh,
title?
the cash flow.
The cash flow, but remember you asked for that and we kind of just move it ahead. So you can kind of look at.
Well, as I think that the format is to a T.
Okay,
And it appears to me that the shortfall has diminished a little bit.
A little bit.
Since the, let's say, February draft.
Mhm.
And I think that's great. It seems to me that the initial premise of being pretty hard-nosed about projecting revenue allows for any good news to improve the picture. And that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what I did add under other income, in June, you will see the Chrissy reimbursement. That's our portion of the Chrissy and the government portion of the Chrissy that will come in. And then in October, we're hoping to have enough money put aside for the purchase of the dump truck. And I expect the dump truck in October. So those two items are helping to offset, and they were not in the original cash flow.
Mhm. No, I think that this is good. I know that there are limited things you can do with the information, but it seems to me that the information is worth having anyway. Yeah, even if you can't fix it.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
keeps it in front of you.
That's right.
Yes.
It's important as anything.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
I find it really easy to follow, which is
Good. Good for me too.
And it's real.
Unfortunately.
Well, it appears to me that we've done our business for the Finance Committee. And if so, I take a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Meeting adjourned.
Okay.